Craft Beer Podcast. I'm Steven Shomler, your host. Today we have just an incredible episode for you. I'm really excited about it. I don't know what I'm excited about more, my guest or my special, amazing co-host, Andre Meunier. How are you?
Well, thank you, Steven. It's an introduction I can't live up to, but I appreciate it.
Oh, come on now. Now, you are, you work for the Oregonian. You're a full-time, real-life, in-the-flesh journalist.
I am for the Oregonian Oregon Live.
Yep, and you are a breaking news editor.
Yep.
And as an incredible lucky dog, you also are a beer writer for the Oregonian.
I do. I have a split personality in the newsroom where in the morning I coordinate our news coverage, and then in the afternoon I get to write about beer. And the afternoon is when all of my colleagues look at me with a stinky eye.
And I love what you do. I love your beer writing. It's a lot of fun. You do some great stories. And if people want to follow your byline in Oregon Live, how do they do that?
Go to OregonLive.com/beer, find a story I wrote, and then if you click on my name at the top of the story, which is called the byline, you will get a list of every story I've ever written. Pretty simple.
And then you do some obnoxiously beautiful photographs on Instagram.
Oh, you're too kind.
Oregonian Beer Guy is who you are on Instagram as well.
Right.
So
Yep,
people can find your stuff.
Appreciate that.
And then just a shameless plug on my part. We've done 3 podcasts together where you've been the guest, and one of those we told your story. So if people want to know how can I become a beer writer? How can I become a journalist? We tell your story, and I think it's pretty informative.
Yeah, just spend 30 years grinding out news, and then when the beer writer leaves, you get to apply for it and get lucky and get it, I guess.
All right, now we are sitting here at Threshold Brewery in Portland, Oregon. Jarek, it is so good. Now, I'm going to butcher your last name, so let's tell us your last name.
Szymanski.
Szymanski. Did I get it right?
You got it.
Jarek Szymanski. Now, Jarek in my head, the way I wrote it, so I said it right, is Yarek, but it's not spelled that way.
Very close. The first letter is actually J.
But it's Jarek, even though it's not Jarek.
It's a silent J.
It's a silent J, Jarek. Okay, and there's an invisible Y.
I would say so, yeah. Yep.
Now, you like a lot of breweries. You're partial to breweries here in the Portland area as the Portland beer writer, although you're willing to drink craft beer, Andre, from any craft beer in the country, right?
I will drink any beer that is in front of me.
But this is you highlighted Threshold in your end of year review for 2020.
I did. 2020 took a look at the pandemic year and kind of what breweries had been through, how they had adapted, how they had survived. Threshold is a fantastic story of how to do it right. Jarek and Sarah, early in the pandemic, started adjusting their business model. They went to go beer, started canning. Well, they were already canning, but they upped their canning. They started home delivery. They were one of the first ones to start doing that. They built a canopy out front. I don't know if that's the word we're calling it, or parklet, where that's covered and where people can go sit at picnic tables and be distanced and drink beer safely when bars and restaurants closed. And they just grinded. And I think they're a great success story of how breweries got through this period.
So if you want to find a link to that content, to that article, or to any of Andre's stuff, you can go to www.thecraftbeerpodcast.com. Find this article. I'll have links where you can follow Threshold, Facebook, Instagram, etc. I'll have links where you can follow Andre, so you can just go right to the website. Every one of my podcast episodes has it embedded right on there, because some people listen to podcasts on podcast platforms. Other people have a grandma that's never going to do it. They can send them right to the website, hit the play button, and listen to it. So Jarek, I have an obnoxious amount of beer in front of me that I'm super excited to taste and talk about. And then I'm just going to take a nap in the back for a few hours after all this beer. But before we get to that, I want to get into some of your story. Where were you born?
I was born and raised in Poland.
And where were you born?
I was born in the city called Włocławek.
Włocławek?
Włocławek.
You want to give it a shot, Andre?
That would be Włocławek. Don't you know Włocławek, Steven? Everybody knows Włocławek.
Włocławek.
Włocławek. Of course, that's what I said.
Sounds about right.
Yeah, that's what I said.
And for people that don't know their geography in Poland, was there a bigger city that's near?
Yeah, the closest would be our capital, Warsaw, and it's about 100 miles northwest from Włocławek.
Okay, Poland is on a list of places I'd like to visit. And we'll talk about the beer scene in Poland in a bit. But where'd you go to high school?
Same time when I was born in Włocławek.
Włocławek. And then I know that something we need to try and have an intervention for, but the high schools don't have mascots.
That is correct, unfortunately.
It is unfortunate.
Yeah.
That's awful. So then you then went to university, roughly 4 years, and 2 of those years you got to do a work travel event where you traveled the first year to the West Coast of the United States.
That is correct.
And first year to the East Coast of the United States. And the second year you got to go to the West Coast of the United States, and you fell in love with the West Coast of the U.S.
Yes, I did. I was just impressed by beautiful national parks and the nature and the ocean. And I just, decided to make my way of living right here on the West Coast.
I have a friend who's a chef, grew up in Florence, Italy, standing on a tomato can, Paulo Calamai, in his grandma's kitchen in Florence, sitting on a tomato can cooking with his grandma. And when he came to the United States as a young man, as visiting, he fell in love with the national parks. They're beautiful, aren't they?
They are, yeah.
Okay, so as I understand the story, in 2004, you're all done with college, or university, as you would say, and you want to get an internship maybe in the Silicon Valley, San Francisco area, because you graduated a degree in computer sciences.
That is correct, yep.
And then you found a company willing to hire you for an internship, and they were right here in the Portland metro area.
That is correct. Yeah, there was a small R&D company in Oregon City, and they took a leap of faith, hiring someone with really bad English language, thick accent, a bunch of phone calls over the ocean and couple emails. Imagine it's 2004, internet is not as sophisticated. We don't have tools to communicate so efficiently as these days. And a few months later, I was here.
That's amazing. So I moved to Portland in 2004 as well. So that's interesting. We both came to Portland the same year. I like that.
Nice.
So what did you think when you got here? Did you like the Portland area?
The first year was just mostly focused on work and trying to discover a little bit of the city and surroundings. I didn't have a car. I relied on public transportation initially. Soon after, a few months later, I got a car and started exploring areas. And, I fell in love. Just accessibility to the ocean as well as mountains. I've always been an outdoor person, so it was perfect for me.
All right, so I want to go back in time now. Now, you moved to the United States 2004. I want to go back in time when you're still, living in Europe. Tell me about your first experience with beer.
The first time I remember I enjoyed beer was when I was on the summer camp in Czech Republic, and I was 16. I was about 16, and we had a very nice, crisp Pilsner with a little bit of the hop presence in it, and it was hot summer day. We were sitting, hanging out by the pond or lake, and it just tasted so good.
So I just want to jump in here and add that that was a vastly better experience than my 16-year-old first beer, which was a Mickey's Big Mouth. So congrats to you.
Thank you.
Pilsner versus a malt liquor.
And I bet, 16-year-olds have different palates, and I bet some of your friends didn't like the beer as much as you did.
Yeah, they did not enjoy it. They felt like it's a little bit too bitter. Yeah, it's almost like tasting avocado when you're being told it's a fruit, but it actually doesn't taste sweet.
Yep.
It was a little bit like the same impression to them.
Now, Andre, I know you're a dad and you have kids. You're very fond of your kids.
Leslie?
I think one of our jobs as parents, particularly as dads, is bad dad jokes. And so do you know the difference between knowledge and wisdom?
Tell me, Steven.
Knowledge is knowing that tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing not to put it in a fruit salad.
Nice.
Nice one.
Okay, so where did your craft beer journey begin on the American side? Something happened to you on Division Street when you moved here.
It did, yeah. I actually discovered craft beer for the first time at New Seasons on Division. It was, I think, one of the first locations that they opened. It was a long time ago, now probably about 15 or 16 years ago. And I started reaching out for different beers, different styles, and I just realized there's more than just polished domestic lager and nice Pilsner from Czech Republic, and I just fell in love with it.
And so it was the craft beer shelf that and then shortly after that, you started homebrewing.
That is correct. Yeah, I was inspired by different styles and options, and also because I'm an engineer as my professional part of life, I was also a little bit of process-driven, and I was curious, and I wanted to reproduce something similar at the home scale.
And then just because I've had your beers, also brewers are a weird creation of science and art, because you definitely have that science background, but I know there's got to be some art in you somewhere because the artistry of your beers is apparent.
I worked in the tech industry for a long time, but I would never be able to open up my artistic side. And I always fulfill myself in like cooking projects. I also picked up photography. I've been doing photography for our brewer as well, where my great wife, she delivers the content for our social media and other things. I just, next step for me was homebrewing and just being able to experiment with different flavors and different ingredients and creating beers that followed into styles that I was learning at the time, as well as experimenting a little bit beyond those styles.
So when you talk about the styles and your creativity, what sort of styles does that come through, and how do that artistry come through in your beers?
Right at the beginning when I started homebrewing, I would go through different style that I learned from John Palmer's book, for example, or just BJCP guide, and I would try different styles and see how it turned out at home. As the years progressed, I would narrow it down to certain beer styles that I really appreciated and I liked myself, and I would try to improve those styles.
Andre, it's funny. You've been around a lot of brewers, as have I. When you talk about how their beer journey began, it's very often they start drinking beer and they want to make it.
Right.
I'm not that way. I drink beer and I just want to have more. I want, this is great. I want more of these things, particularly when I was new to craft beer and I learned a new style. I want to try more. Who else makes a style I can try? But it's a different kind of wiring to say, I want to reproduce it. I want to create it. I want to find out how it was made.
Absolutely. I get asked all the time, do you homebrew? No. No interest. I would rather rely on people who know what they're doing.
You have to be a little bit crazy in order to start brewing.
Yeah.
Well, as my friend Tomas Slider says, madness is inspiration for creativity. So I'm paraphrasing him. What was the first beer you homebrewed?
The first beer that I homebrewed was an West Coast IPA. It was a kit that I picked up from F.H. Steinbart's, which is a great homebrew shop in Poland with a...
In Portland?
In Portland, with a century of history already.
Yeah, F.H. Steinbart's is iconic. It's been around forever. Have you written an article yet about F.H. Steinbart's?
No.
I would like to request that. I want to read a Andre Meunier Oregonian article about Steinbart's. They've been around since before the Prohibition as a homebrew shop, and they survived during Prohibition. There's a good story there for you.
They have, and they've been on my story list, and as of this moment, they've moved up close to the top.
Okay, good. When that comes out, I will share it on my social media. Say, go check out this cool thing from Andre, and how awesome that Steinbart's, a lot of brewers kind of got beginnings, their beginnings journey. Steinbart's was a part of it, and how cool to hear they were kind of the beginnings of yours.
Exactly. It's not only a place when you can get your ingredients, but like everybody is really passionate and helpful. And they reach out to you when you're at the store to guide you what you need and help with, process and some brewing information, because they're also passionate about what they do.
Yeah,
and it's to help homebrewers and even, upcoming professional brewers.
Yeah, it's not an uncommon story to hear two people who went into business together to say, oh yeah, we were both at Steinbart's buying homebrew equipment, or
we met over there.
And we met there and decided to kick in.
Okay, so roughly 2005, you start homebrewing, starting craft beer. You got to Portland in 2004, and then probably the best day of your life happened, as far as I can tell, from an outsider looking in 2006. You at a martini bar, and what happened?
Well, I met my lovely and very smart wife, Sarah.
And she's your not-so-secret weapon to the success of this brewery, in my opinion.
That is correct.
I mean, you got to have great beer. But in this day and age, if you have great beer and you don't tell your story, particularly in an iconic place like Portland, you got to tell your story. And she really does a great job with that.
She's been amazing. She's actually the one that actually brings customer to our place, because she puts us on the map.
Well, I think you guys are a phenomenal team. You make great beer.
Well, thank you.
She does good storytelling, and together you cobble together running a business, because I know you've seen this, Andre. Brewers forget they have to run a business.
Absolutely. It's a common story, speaking of common stories, is that somebody is passionate about beer, passionate about brewing, and only wants to brew and doesn't realize how much else is involved. And once they end up realizing all I'm doing is running a business and this isn't what I want to do.
That is
things
correct.
go south.
Yeah. Sometimes brewing day feels like day off because I can actually, hang out in the back and see magic happening.
Oh, I love that. I love that. So what year did it first enter your head that you might want to open your own brewery?
That happened around 2014, I believe. Sarah and I, we have a great neighborhood. We have a great blog. Lots of people that we know. We love to share our beer. We used to have blog parties. We continue so not during COVID. And I would brew a lot of beers as a home brewer. I would share it with friends, family, and neighbors. And at some point, which I couldn't believe that they said that, but they would say that my beer is actually tasting pretty good. And that's where the inception of possibly opening my own place started.
Yeah, I hear that a lot. People will tell you, you should open your brewery. And I want to caution, if anyone's listening to the podcast and you're a home brewer, and people tell you that, they might be right. If it's just your close family and friends, maybe put your beer out to a bigger group before you launch a brewery. I've had a lot of home brew that people thought was amazing that wasn't necessarily that amazing.
Generally, it's your buddy who's getting it for free, telling you how good it is.
Exactly. But in your case, I wish I could go back in time and have those beers. I bet that would have been just an amazing, eye-opening experience. So that's roughly 2014. And when did you decide, I'm going to go for it? By the way, 2014, friends and family are saying you should open a brewery. What was Sarah saying then?
She was very supportive and encouraging at the same time.
She was on board with this crazy
Exactly.
idea.
Yeah, we have a great partnership. Our relationship is really strong, and we usually decide on things together. And I would not even consider it without her support.
And what year did you decide to go for it and launch Threshold?
It was about 2 years later. I was doing I think 3 or 4 week vacation time off from work. I was in between jobs at the time. I went back to Poland to visit my family, my friends. I hanged out with my brother. Made a stop in Germany as well to see a good friend. And it's nice to step away, and that's where your creative juices, your mind opens up a little bit and helps you to see bigger picture. And that was really nice and refreshing. And that's kind of around the time when I decided to actually go for it and work towards a opening brewery in Portland.
Okay, I like that story. And they said, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to have one. So where did the name Threshold come from?
Threshold came as another really good iteration of names that we tried to name the brewery with. There were a lot of inspirations, but all of those beer.
Here, I can help you out here because you told me this 2 years ago when I wrote about why you chose that name in a story I wrote about you guys opening. And you told me, quote, they chose the name Threshold because they wanted their beers to provide customers, actual quote, a flavor and aroma experience they haven't experienced before, Jarek said.
Thank you, Andre. That would be correct. Yep.
Was it hard finding a name?
It was very hard. It was weeks of research and brainstorming. Everything was taken already. And finally, Sarah, my wife, actually kind of thought about it, and we just decided to go for it. And that's perfect description of our vision and what we want to achieve. We want to brew beers that actually take you on the journey of flavor and aroma. Sometimes they're a little bit different than you would expect, but in a really positive way.
So read that quote again for me, Andre. I loved it.
Let me go back and find it. Meanwhile, I was just thinking that, Jarek, listening to you talk, I sort of feel like we've discovered the real driving force behind this brewery. Might be your wife.
That is correct. I just try to brew beer in between paying bills.
That's right. Steven, they chose the name Threshold because they want their beers to provide customers a, quote, flavor and aroma experience they haven't experienced before. And I would say they're succeeding in their first 2 years.
Yeah, so it's kind of on the threshold of a new journey.
Just for the record, at the end of 2019, I had my top 20 beers in Portland, and Threshold's Roma Stout was number 5. So I highly recommend the Roma Stout.
So we're going to drink that in a bit. I'm going to get to taste that, and then I'll drink it, and then you guys will get to talk about it. I'm looking forward to that. I've always liked the name Threshold because for me, not knowing the little tidbit that Andre just shared, which I'm grateful for, it kind of just sounded like home to me. because Threshold, a nice home, there's a threshold you're stepping across. I love the name. So 2014, hey, maybe we should have a brewery. 2016, I'm going to get one. And when did you open?
We actually opened our doors. Soft opening was in January 2019. It was January 10th. We had like Friends and Family Day. We had a Media Day soon after.
Yeah, I remember that Media Day. That was a lot of fun.
Yep. And we opened with 3 of our beers, and we just complemented our tap list with great beers from around Portland and state.
And what did it feel like? Your brewery's open, people are in your tap room and paying you money for your beer. What did that feel like?
It felt really surreal. The stress of pre-opening, tasks, faded away, but like the new pressure and stress arrived from just trying to make a beer that will, taste good and sell to our patrons. It was surreal for first few weeks, definitely.
The first, one of your first beers was Jens Bailed, right?
That is correct.
That's your grisette. It's a lovely beer. I love the story you told me about how you named it. Can you tell that story?
Yeah, we work with this great guy named Jens. He is a great craftsman. He's an electrician, and we're supposed to work on our electrical system here at the brewery, but unfortunately, our electrical plans had to be delayed quite significantly, and he couldn't really wait for us because it was a summertime, really busy with other assignments, and he had to move on. So at the beginning, we're thinking about, okay, we need to name a beer, but we're busy brewing, so how about this? And it really worked out, and there's a great story behind it.
Yeah. Jens had left the building.
Yeah,
Jens bailed.
But eventually, soon after, came back, and I gave him a tour. He came over with family. It was really great time.
Oh, good.
Does anybody want to take a stab for those who don't know what a grisette is?
I hear this question at least twice a week, or not even more.
And does either of you have an answer you want to share?
Well, I always, and I don't think this is necessarily right. I mean, a grisette was a sort of a grayish beer, table beer. I sort of think of it as kind of a saison light.
I quite often describe it to folks as well. There's probably quite a bit of flexibility in how you can create it.
Yeah.
But table beer is a really good description. Traditionally was served in France, Belgium to miners and farmers.
That's the grisette or gray.
Exactly. Definitely lower ABV. Our grisette clicks in at about 5%, but there were much lower ABV beers, probably around 2-3%, just to hydrate workers throughout the day.
Yeah, so some legends say it's originated from the mining regions around France or Belgium. And then it has a little bit of a similar kind of journey to like a Goes or Goza, depending on how you want to say it. 2016, there was just one brewery in Belgium making a grisette. But then American breweries started making it, kind of like Goza was gone for a while. And then it became, there's more brewed in the United States now than there is back in Germany. Grisette had that kind of similar experience.
Exactly. Yeah, and there's quite a few folks that come in and they're really happy to see grisette back on tap, and they enjoy it, as well as I said, like folks, they don't know exactly what it is. So I'm always happy to educate them. And
that was one of your first beers, you said?
One of the first 3 beers brewed here.
And why would you start with an obscure style like that? It's not that obscure, but it's not also that well known.
Yeah, let's say our brew house was brand new and we've never brewed anything on it, and because it's a relatively easy build from like the point of view of ingredients, the grist bill and also cost, we decided to go with something light. Grisette doesn't really have much hop presence in it. It's just a little bit of the kettle additions to balance maltiness. So obviously we didn't have to spend that much money on hops when you're kind of on the budget and you're self-financed.
There's that businessman coming through early.
A little bit, yeah. Trying to see how it goes, and it's a little bit forgettable style as well, because it doesn't have to be 6% as we decided. It can be 5.5 or 6.2. It'll be okay.
Yeah, it's traditionally a low ABV beer. And then a lot of people don't realize, whether you are a brand new brewer or someone's brewing for 20 years, when you start a brand new brew system, that thing has to be calibrated. And you got to figure out what it does a little bit different than other brew systems.
That is correct. I often compare new brewing system to your new grill, whether it's gas, charcoal, or smoker. All those places, all those grills, they have like a hot and cold spots, and you just need to learn how to use it.
I like that. So, and Jensbale, this is 2021 recording this. It's on right now. It's occasionally on?
It is on most of the time. It's our almost all year round beer.
And people like it.
People really like it, and I also, which we will talk soon about it, but I use it as a base beer for our mulled beer called Grzaniec that came from Poland.
And I can't wait to talk about that. So what kind of beers do you love personally to brew and to drink? Do you have some favorites?
As I said, as former homebrewer, I went through several different styles, but I fell in love with 3 different types of beers, and that's what I like to mostly brew at Threshold. Hop-forward beers, which are usually IPAs and pales, hop aroma and flavor hop-forward. Both New England style called hazy IPAs as well as a West Coast. I also like barrel-aged beers, dark whiskey forward barrel-aged beers, as well as sour beers, with mixed cultures, aged in wine barrels.
I was going to ask you exactly that. Part of your name is Threshold Brewing and Blending, which implies your barrel program. I know at the beginning, when you first started, that was a major focus. Is that still as much of a focus? And what sort of blending are you doing?
It's still a focus. We released a couple holiday blends for Christmas 2020. We did mixed culture farmhouse that was conditioned on cranberries, and then the second beer was dark barrel-aged blend of 3 different stouts, condition of cocoa, cardamom, and orange zest. So that's a couple examples of blending.
I love your 3 styles. One of my favorite styles, I call them Christmas beers. I just made up the term. Dark, chocolatey, roasty, 12%, barrel aged. Those are just the Holiday Ale Fest beers.
Winter ales.
Yeah, I love those. I love those so much.
We actually had a privilege to be part of the Holiday Ale Fest in 2019, and we did Big Imperial Stout aged on dark fruit. And it was
I remember that beer.
Really, really well received. Yeah.
I remember that too. Yeah. Speaking of Holiday Ale Fest, we didn't have it this past year because of the pandemic. I'm hoping that it happens this winter of 2021. But you had a unique experience that not everybody had. You had 1 year, your brewery opened, and then for your 1-year anniversary, you get to celebrate a pandemic.
Yeah.
What did that feel like when the shutdown happened, and that first few weeks of the shutdown? What was going on in your guys' heads?
It was very stressful. As a up and coming place without any history, just trying to make your mark in the local neighborhood in Montevilla. Honestly, the first few days were really stressful. Like, it was difficult to even think about how we can mitigate any type of sale problems. So soon after Andre?
Oh, no, I didn't mean to cut you off. I was going to say that you quickly got busy with, like we discussed before, putting beer in cans, getting it out to customers, doing social media, building the parklet, brewing. Jarek, how tired are you?
I do what I love, and I don't think I'm that tired.
Wow. Yeah. Youth.
But you had to pivot shortly after the pandemic hit and do different to survive.
Yeah, we had to close our tap room. I remember, I think March 16th was the last day when we actually had our customers, our regulars.
So that's a year and 2 days ago from today. Today's March 18th.
Yeah, can't believe it. It's been over a year now. As I said, a little bit of stress is really good for your creativity. A lot of stress can be even better. So soon after, as Andre mentioned, we pivoted to takeout, curbside pickup. We quickly built our online website that allowed our customers to order online, and we launched deliveries to people's houses simply. And thanks to our local legal control agency, they adjusted our liquor licenses that allowed same-day delivery, which was very helpful to our industry.
And speaking of effort, I seem to remember Instagram pictures of Sarah loading crowlers onto a bike to ride to make home deliveries. Am I remembering that correctly?
There might have been a few like this. Yep.
That's some effort.
Yeah. Initially we were packaging in crowlers. So one of the challenges was actually finding outsourcing cans because, at the beginning, like everybody wanted to package in aluminum and it was pretty difficult sometimes to find those cans.
And then Coca-Cola bought all the cans in the world, so nobody had any cans.
Yeah. But, fortunately, the brewing community is really good in Portland and, we had a lot of information sharing and, I was driving around literally around town and even in Washington, like asking brewers and taprooms for cans and people shared and people helped.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That is incredible. Paraphrasing James Allen, he wrote a book, As a Man Thinketh, and I think 1911 the book came out. I could be wrong on the year, but it was a long time ago. And paraphrasing him, you said that a little bit of stress is good for creativity and a lot of stress can be too. Paraphrasing James Allen, circumstances don't make the person, they reveal the person. And so I think that a lot of stress for some people is crushing, but you and your wife must have some incredible internal fortitude to press through and to pivot and to keep going.
It might be right. It might be something. Yeah, I agree with this statement, definitely.
I'll second that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's impressive. My hat's off to you.
Thank you.
To gut it out and to make it happen. And I'm excited for this fall. Maybe this summer, we'll see. I'd rather be a little bit off, but everything's kind of more back to normal. I can sit here in the tap room and just enjoy a beer, or maybe this winter come back in the tap room and have your amazing mulled beer. That day is coming. But for food, when more normal times, the tap room's open. Right now, you partner with chefs and food carts and do kind of pop-ups occasionally.
That is correct. Yeah. Soon after we opened, our model was to invite pop-up chefs and food carts because we love community, and having space allows us actually to enable other creative people to showcase their creations. We don't have our kitchen right now, but we're hoping that maybe in a couple years or so we'll open something at the tap room.
And the pop-ups are popular right now, particularly in Portland. And so to be able to tell chefs, at least until you get your kitchen open, hey, come have a pop-up, I think that's pretty ingenious. And like you said, a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it helps to advertise those folks to our community as well.
It's great branding and marketing because you've got the pop-up telling people that they're coming, the pop fans of that chef or that food cart saying, I'll be here, and they get exposed to another awesome Portland brewery.
That is correct.
Very brilliant.
So when you open your kitchen, are you also going to be head chef?
I wish it was me, myself, and I, so I could do 2 or 3 different jobs at the same time. We will definitely, try to partner with someone that's as passionate about making food as I am passionate about making beer.
Yeah.
I would love to have food that would have some kind of Polish accent in it because I'm from Poland, and there's a lot of good food out there in Poland, not very well known. So that's kind of the plan.
And what is a Polish dish that maybe you'd love to have on the menu?
One of the easy street food dishes is called zapiekanka, which is zapiekanka. This is
that I can say the food words. It seems
pretty
like
good.
Yeah.
I can't say the cities, but the food I can get.
It's an open face, toasted or baked pizza on the bun, I would say. And it consists of a few different ingredients, just, tomato sauce, mushrooms, and cheese. Can have a little bit of the meat on it as well, and it just goes so good with beer.
That sounds amazing.
It takes me back because I used to eat it when I was in elementary school. We had those kiosks all around, like you have, fast food joints here, but they were individually owned, and everybody had their own spin on it, and it just, it just brings back memories. It just tastes so good. It's just this perfect combination of cheese and mushrooms and salt and pepper and a little bit of the paprika, and it's just warm, and it's really good.
So it's a bit of a tangent. You love Poland. Poland's amazing, but Portland feels like home now.
Portland has been home for 17 years now.
Yeah, and it feels that way.
It does.
And you actually are a U.S. citizen now?
Yes, I am. I became naturalized about 4 years ago now.
Well, I just want to thank you. You know, one of the things that I grew up in the United States of America, and the country I grew up in has always been made stronger by immigrants. And I'm always grateful when people from other parts of the world come to the United States and make my country stronger. And so thank you so much
I appreciate
for being
Thank
part
you.
of that. I just love that we get those experiences. Anyways, I'm big. I'm sorry, Andre. I'm very careful with what I say, but immigration is something I just always grateful when people come here.
Well, Steven, it would behoove you all to know I'm Canadian.
Well, okay, most immigration I love. No, I'm just kidding.
I was actually going to say, do Canadians count in that?
They do. Yes, they do. So, maybe, just maybe there is someone that will listen to this podcast in Poland that would love to come, that's a chef, that she or he would love to come here and cook because I would love to have really good Polish food cooked out of your kitchen in a few years, 3, 4, 5 years from now. That would be amazing. And if the person came from Poland and heard this podcast, how cool a story would that be, Andre?
That would be lovely.
Yeah, so I'm just going to put that in the universe and see what happens.
Sounds like a plan.
We both have our Steven marching orders. I have to write a story about Steinbart's, and you have to bring in a Polish chef.
I think it'd be fun. I would love to have. I love really good Polish food. For a while, we had a restaurant that served food from the restaurant of Georgia, or from the country of Georgia, and boy, that food was so good. Stuff I'd never heard of before till I ate it. And I would love to get to know Polish food through your lens. That would be amazing. All right, let's drink and talk about some of these beers. Where do you want us to start?
I'm sorry, I already started, Steven.
Oh, okay. Well, do you have one? What order would you recommend? So we've got before us, we've got Roma. We've got an amazing beer that's going to be a spring beer. We'll save the warm beer for the end. Then we've got Schwing, right? Did I say that right?
We have a couple IPAs. We have Schwing.
Yep.
And Night Runner IPA.
Night Runner, and then Magic People.
Magic People.
Magic People.
Bonus pour.
Bonus pour. Okay, you're killing me, but I'm happy. I'm gonna die happy.
You're good.
So Andre, you're one of the beer experts here. Which one should we start with?
Let's start with this smoked beer that you gave us early. It's light. It'd be a good place to step off.
Yeah, I think so. This is Grojisky, also called Gratzer beer. It's a
Gratzer beer.
Gratzer.
Gratzer beer.
It's been brewed in Poland for about 7 centuries.
Wow.
Long time ago, and then was forgotten for a long time, and recently started emerging again as a beer style. It's 100% oak smoked wheat beer. Really low ABV. It should have a little bit of the smoke presence on the nose that will go away as you taste in it. And for this particular rendition, I did some research through Polish historical books and more modern articles, and I came up with the recipe. I also used Polish hop called Lubelski, which is also called a child of Sass hop. And it brings very nice lemony, spicy notes to the beer. It's a really low ABV beer, should be consumed in the summer. I think could be very nice, refreshing beverage, drunk on its own as well as paired with food pretty well. Yeah,
it strikes me as a really nice table beer that you would have with a meal, and probably historically was used as that. But what I really like that it doesn't have the upfront forward smoke presence of, say, a Rauk beer, where if you don't like a smoky flavor, you're not going to like a Rauk beer. Where is this? It's very subtle.
That is correct. I'm a little bit afraid using smoked malt because I don't want people to get a little bit nervous about the amount of smoke in it. I would love people to just sit outside on the nice, warm, sunny day and enjoy a glass of it, and it's going to be a very nice, refreshing beer.
Yeah, everybody's taste buds are different, and I know that Rauk beer has a place, but a lot of Rauk beer I've had since I've been in Portland, particularly brewed here, by craft brewers here, is hit you in the head with smoke flavor, and I have a place for it. I can appreciate it, but I've never had one where I think of, I want this with a meal. I don't know if everyone. Some people love them. That's okay, but that's been my experience.
Maybe with a cigar.
Yeah, maybe with a cigar, and follow up with a whiskey or something. I don't know, but this is incredible, and the smoke is light. I'm a big fan of David Gluth. He is Urban German. Now he's often at the beer festivals, with his amazing sausages. I would want one of his sausages, and this.
Right with that.
Oh my gosh, that's one of the places. So just the fact that you say smoke, I'm like, and then I taste it, and I want to have a meal with it. I can think of a lot of things to go with, but I really like this.
Yep.
I'm surprised how much I like it.
That's awesome.
And so this is kind of like your spring, summer seasonal. So the current plan, things change, but currently is every spring and summer you'll bring this one on tap.
That's the goal. Yeah.
Yep, that's the goal.
And I'd like to keep a little bit of like the Polish accent in my brewing as well. And there are a few styles that Poland can be proud of, and the Grazer or Grojisky beer is one of those styles.
I love that. I think that's fantastic.
And then right now on the board you have 3 hazies. Can you walk us through least bitter to most bitter?
Of course. So let's start with Schwing, which has 3 different experimental hops, and overall it's really tropical, stone fruit forward with a little bit of pineapple. That's the least bitter beer.
Any thoughts, Andre, on this one?
I really love this beer. It's grapefruit forward. It's tropical, as Jarek said. But I think the best quality of this beer is its balance. It doesn't have too much bitterness. It doesn't have too much sort of cloying sweetness that a lot of hazies might have. It's got a creamy mouthfeel, but it's not overly creamy.
I was about to say it has a little bit of the creaminess to it as well.
But it's not cloying like that and not sticky. And it's effervescent, and I just think it's lovely.
Yeah, I want this, in the summer, my wife and I sit by a river, and, when it's hot, 90 degrees out, to me, this is a great river beer. I want this on a hot day. I mean, I love this beer, but to me, this seems like a perfect hot day beer. And then I might be tempted, I know this is naughty probably, but I might be tempted to just mix this with some gin.
It's the tanginess in it.
Yeah.
We could have sort of give you a gin and juice idea.
Yeah. I just really nice. Hats off. This is good. So this one's called
Schwing.
Party on.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So this is an ode to Wayne's World.
That is correct.
Okay. I like that. Okay. What's the next one?
The next one will be Night Runner, which is our another emerging flagship. And this beer was created from my love to West Coast hops. Lots of sea hops. There's some Warrior and Columbus in it. Columbus is one of my favorite hops. If I could, I would put it in every single beer, which don't necessarily work all the time. But so this beer will have citrus notes as well as a little bit of like a dankness and resin to it. So this is not your average, juicy IPA. It has, a little bit of like a dark element to it, but it's still like super easy and refreshing.
Really well balanced. Really, I like the depth of malt in it, and I also like the hit of weed I get on the nose. I mean, not that I'm. Anyway, it's delicious,
and it has a great aroma. That's what he's trying to say. The bouquet is fantastic.
No, that's awesome. The dankness is there, but it's not going to punch you in the face either.
Yeah, it's an approachable dankness. Some dank beers are like, whoa,
in your face.
Yeah, in your face, and I don't know if I even want to take another sip. And this, and not that I don't later, because you kind of have to get around that. But this is like, I take a sip and I love this. I want another one.
Finishes really nicely dry. How do you do that? Why does it do that?
I love New England style IPAs, but I also don't like when they get a little bit too sweet, in case they don't have any additional ingredients like lactose and other things. So I tend to push my kettle additions a little bit more than some of the examples that are being made here. That's what makes the beer a little bit drier.
Gotcha. And it's noticeable and appreciated.
Yeah, it's very good. Oh, what food would we? Any thoughts on food? I want to pair it with something. Nothing's coming to mind. Anything that you like, Jarek, with this one? Does fried chicken sound crazy? Fried chicken and macaroni salad?
Never.
Sounds, yeah, pizza. Good spicy, Asian food maybe.
Yeah,
There you go.
Yeah, almost something like with even a little bit of sweet to kind of balance out the dankness. Some beers you just want to drink, some beers you want to have with food, and this is one I want to do both with.
Nice. I might have it with my Fat Boy ice cream sandwich tonight.
There you go. That, as crazy as that sounds,
Right?
that would work.
Chocolate, vanilla. Might be better with the Roma, but it would work with this as well.
Okay, and the third one?
The third one, it's called Magic People, and that's the tribute to creative folks on the East and West Coast that play with hops and make amazing IPAs. It is really citrus-forward, juicy, like New England-style IPA as well, with a little bit more of the bitterness pushed forward.
Yeah.
That's experimental. First time I brewed that. Could be seasonal. It's been really well received, and people have been enjoying it.
Yeah, if you like your IPAs with a little more of a bite at the end, this is the one you're going to want to order, which is a very popular preference in the Northwest and in Oregon. But again, not a harsh bite, but just enough to get your attention with bitterness. What is the IBU on this? Do you know?
I would say about maybe 35 to 40.
I was going to guess 40.
Yeah. Yep. And this one particularly was brewed with Brew One experimental hop, which gives a little bit of the pineapple flavors, a little bit tropical note to it.
A little
mango, Citra, and then obviously Galaxy.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is kind of like a really good hophead beer that's not bitter. At least that's how I would.
I suspect it's going to do very well during the warmer days as well.
Yeah, now let's drink this beer that I know that Andre does not like at all. Andre, why don't you tell us what you think about this aroma, and then we'll let Jarek fill in. So this is a beautiful, beautiful color. It's just, I'm holding it up to the light, and it's phenomenal. Tell us about this beer, Andre, since you are you know it and love it well.
This aroma is a coffee stout, and coffee stouts are lovely beers. Sometimes they're too much coffee, and sometimes they're too much stout, and sometimes they're too much sweet, and sometimes they're too much dry. And this one is just pegged dead in the middle of all of that, with a depth of flavor that isn't too heavy, but it also isn't light. And I think you've just found the perfect margins on this beer, and I love it every time I drink it. From the first time I did in February of 2019 to today, the quality is still there.
Yeah, thank you. I think that this Roma coffee style might be in first 3 beers that have been brewed on the system. Yeah.
That's unfair.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and I've gone through iterations of, I've been continuing to improve the recipe for this beer. The goal behind this beer is to be coffee forward with like a chocolatey, not roasty, but chocolatey, almost like a baker's chocolate finish to it. Not overly sweet or dry, just kind of in between, like Andre described it. So
it's reminiscent of a little brown ale in there.
Yep.
With that nuttiness.
I agree with you because, I don't use much of the really dark roasted malt in it.
Yeah.
And, we partner with Mudworks Roastery with Mark. He's a very knowledgeable roaster, and every single time I brew a new batch, we partner up and find a coffee that would work very well with it.
Yeah, it's impressive. You've been professionally brewing for 2 years?
I have been about 2 years.
That is so insane, given the amazing quality of these 5 beers that I've had. I would swear you've been professionally brewing for 10 or 15 years. And it's different. I have great respect for people that homebrew and nail a brewing homebrew is very, very different than brewing on a big system. It just, my friends own Retrolicious Food Cart, and years ago he gave me a quote, Roy did. He said that salt is not an algorithm. And what he meant is that you make some scalloped potatoes at home and you put a little bit of salt in, and then you take the recipe for 500 people. You can't just put 500 times the salt. You could put 500 times the potatoes, but you got to figure out the salt. And cooking professionally is very different than cooking at home, and brewing professionally is very different than brewing at home. And it feels like, I don't know, like you've been brewing for 10 or 15 years. This is really, really amazing quality beer I'm tasting.
I appreciate it. Yeah.
Am I onto something, Andre?
No, absolutely. I've always been very impressed with Jarek and his beers, especially. There's some amazing homebrewers out there, but not having gone through any sort of technical training, that his beers are so dialed in, has always stuck out. I just wanted to read what I wrote about Roma in 2019. when it made my top 10 beers in Portland that year list. Roma offers the intense aroma of a warming cup of joe, followed by a well-balanced toasted malt Java hit and a bit of smooth, creamy sweetness as well. So that sort of complements what we've been talking about.
You know, have you ever thought about being a writer? You're really good at that.
My kids write it. They're better writers than I am.
I think you're a very good writer.
Steven.
I do.
Steven, you mentioned brewing professionally. I'm still trying to after 2 years, I'm trying to wrap my head around what the professionally means. I feel like I've been brewing on the bigger system as a home brewer with big dreams.
Yep.
And I've been kind of specific. I've been like focused and trying to improve, listen to my colleagues, really good feedback, constructive feedback in order to like be better.
Yep.
Process improvements that happen throughout the time as well. So, I have a little bit of the technical knowledge, but I haven't gone to a brewing school. But I put my heart and soul in it, and I treat brewing a little bit like making a great meal when you approach your ingredients based on experience. And I was lucky because I had homebrewed for about 12 years, which was really helpful. But as you mentioned, you cannot just go straight up from 5-10 gallons to 300 gallons because we have a 10-barrel system.
Is there anybody who stands out in the Portland brewing community that has been not necessarily a mentor, but really a helpful guiding source for you that you'll go to for advice? And what do they tell you?
Big shout out to Joel from Gateway Brewing. He's a really good friend of ours, and his beer is amazing, as well as his knowledge about brewery industry and like brewing equipment and processes. So he's been very helpful. For the first year, we pretty much brewed without fully functioning glycol system, and he helped us dial it in, which made our beers better. So big shout out to them. Michael from Untitled Brewworks, he's been sharing information and exchanging some, ingredients. Been great. Thomas from Culmination, really great guy.
Tomas is amazing.
He's very amazing. And, Sean from Ruse, answered a few of my questions.
Yeah.
Not necessarily in Portland, but guys from Rich Break Brewing in Astoria. They've been really helpful as I was going through steps to open a brewery. So really helpful. I even drove to Astoria at the beginning of COVID, and he helped us, Josh, over there with Crowler cans. I drove to Astoria for like couple hundred cans. So
you mentioned Michael at Montevilla Brewing, just around the corner, Michael Cora. And the fact that you basically moved into his neighborhood and opened up a brewery, 50 yards away?
Sounds about right.
And his reaction to that sort of speaks to the Portland community of brewers that, he could have been a little pissed off about it.
Yeah.
But sounds like he's been good to you and helpful and a good colleague.
Yeah, I believe we were really good neighbors. We, as I said, we try to help each other whenever we can. I went over there when he was doing a canning run with one of the local, mobile canning companies, Craft Canning, which we also started doing. I feel like we're in it together. We're going to be stronger if we work together.
Yeah, when people think, hey, we can go over to Montevilla and hit those two breweries.
Exactly. And I hope that we're just kind of bring more to the neighborhood and making it a little bit more attractive to folks that are visiting from different parts of Portland or different, city or even out of state.
Well, and you've got this great little downtown strip area, Montevilla, that's really fun.
Lots of fun businesses. They start reopening more and more. Yeah, it's a really fun place to be around.
The parklet has caught on.
Yeah. Yep.
So Joel, Gateway Brewing, I've done a podcast with him for his story. I love that. Tomas, near and dear to my heart. I love Tomas. I've done a podcast with his story. So I definitely, Ruse is on the list to get to. Had it scheduled and they had some challenges come up. I love Ruse, but I was lucky enough to be in the brewery at Culmination as they were coming. I kind of watched them grow. And then Michael is someone I would love. You talk about a good coffee beer. Montevilla they have a lot of really good beers, but they have
Bipartisan.
The Bipartisan
Porter.
is phenomenal. Yeah. So Michael, if you listen to this podcast, I would love to look forward to the day that I have you on the podcast and tell your story. So if those are some of the people that have reached out to you, those are all great people.
Well, and Ruse, if you're taking, hazy IPA advice from Ruse, you're on the right guys. They were my brewery of the year last year, and they continue to evolve and make amazing beers.
Yeah, they've been making amazing beer. I agree with you.
So you mentioned something, getting your head around what it means to be a professional brewer. And I don't want you to miss this. There are a lot of people listening to this podcast that your full-time job is brewing beer. And you used to have a day job doing something else. And not that you didn't like that day job, but you were able to ditch that day job and step into something that I can tell you absolutely love. And there are a lot of people that would absolutely love to be able to be a full-time professional brewer. So I very much appreciate your humbleness. Tomas is an incredible brewer. He's one of the best brewers I know. He's one of the best palates I know. And he is not comfortable with me calling him a brewmaster. He's very humble. He's always seeking new knowledge and learning. And you kind of have that same spirit, reminds me of it. But at the same time, keep that humbleness. But also, it's pretty amazing. A lot of people would love to have a professional job like yours. And so don't miss that. There are a lot of people like, oh man, I wish I could brew professionally full time.
I can imagine. I was there.
You were that guy.
I learned about it for several years, and my advice is never give up. Think about it and work towards your goal.
Yep. Amen. All right. This crazy thing that I've been sipping on the whole time. So we have a spring summer seasonal. Tell me the name of this one again.
It's called Grojisky in the Polish language, or Grazer.
Grazer is easier for me to say. Can you say the other one?
Grodicja.
Oh, goodness. How dare you?
I'm also a foreigner.
Does Canada count? Left me some Tim Hortons. Is that okay? Is that okay to say?
As long as it's a maple.
Maple. Okay. Speaking of Tim Hortons, how could I forget? Are you familiar with Baker's Dozen? The Portland Beer and Coffee Festival.
Oh,
my friend Brian Yeager, it got canceled last year. I don't think it's happening this year.
Yeah.
But he's just moved back to Bend, or moved to Bend, back to Oregon. And so I am hoping beyond hope that we are able to have the Baker's Dozen Coffee, Beer, and Donut Festival in 2022. Yeah. And I will be texting a picture of this to Brian saying, you got to have Roma.
Actually, it was the beer that we were about to send to Baker's Dozen last year.
Really?
That didn't happen. Yeah, we were talking to them. And unfortunately, the pandemic happened and all the events were canceled. But, I can agree with you.
This beer and a maple donut, would that work a maple bar? Can you imagine?
Between that and that open-faced sandwich he was talking about earlier?
Oh, yeah. What's the name of that sandwich again?
Zapiekanka. Wow.
Yeah. I can't say those other words you can say, but I can get the food with zapiekanka. I want that.
Yeah.
And Roma with some maple bars. Oh, boy. And delicious donuts. There's a lot of good donut shops. I love donuts, but delicious donuts. They have a good apple fritter. They have a good maple bar. I'm telling you. Okay. Last one. Tell us the name of this one again.
So this one is called Grzaniec.
And it is your winter seasonal. In winter, it comes around. It gets cold, October, November, depending on when the cold hits. And this is a warm beer.
That is correct. Think about mulled wine or cider. It's the same idea, except I use beer. Clean beer. In our case, that's our Jens Bale Grisette. You just want to use it without much of the hop presence or any other flavors, so that you can build up all the mulling spices. And also we add honey to it for the spice to shine. And it keeps you nice and warm if you're hanging out outside, whether it's a pandemic or, cold, chilly evening in Portland in the middle of December with rain.
What do you think, Andre?
I like it.
It's different.
No, I love warm beer, mulled beer. I think we were talking earlier about Cascade Brewing's Gluey Creek, which is one of my favorite mulled beers. And this is right in the same kind of family. It's got the clove, which you actually have whole cloves in it, along with orange.
Some cinnamon in it.
Yeah, cinnamon, cardamom. The orange zest comes through. It's It's lovely.
So is there, I don't know if there's any faith in your background or not, Andre, in your journey, any church experience, but in church there's these phrases you may or may not know that God loves you and has a plan for your life. And I like to think I've improved that thing. God loves you and I have a plan for your life. So not only FH Steinbars, but when winter of 2021 comes toward the end of 2021, I would love to have an article about this.
My editor is going to be surprised to hear she has been replaced.
No. I'm just, your editor's amazing. I just want to encourage. I think that tell her this is a great beer. And then, once in a while I get to host fun events. And I would so love to host an event this winter here with some kind of baker that bakes treats to go
and
with this.
With Grzaniec, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that would
Cinnamon
be.
roll.
Oh, yeah. Just
like on Christmas morning.
Yeah, just a couple. People can buy tickets. They can show up. They can get 3 or 4 baked goods, a pour of this. We have fun for a couple hours. To me, that sounds amazing. Don't you think some kind of good baked goods with this?
Oh, absolutely.
My
I
goodness.
would absolutely drink this in the morning with a cinnamon roll and then go take a nap.
This is like a blonde pastry stout.
A blonde
Of beers.
pastry stout?
Yeah.
Right.
I could even have it with a good pecan pie with a little bit of the one that sometimes I've had a pecan pie that's sweet. Sometimes had them when they put something that makes it a little bit bitter or a little bit sharp. That would be amazing.
Have you ever had a French tarte au sucre?
No.
It's a sugar pie, essentially, but it's a browned sugar pie, and this would go with it really
Sounds
well.
really good.
Yeah, I'll hunt down a baker and then I'll check with the boss and see if Sarah says yes to doing an event like that. I'm not kidding. I just love doing fun events. That would be a lot of fun. That would be a lot of fun. And then we can say, what is this beer? Oh, here's the article that Andre wrote all about it.
I just checked my schedule, Steven, and I'm open that day.
Perfect. Let's do it.
All right. Well, Jarek, it has been just a delight to have you on the podcast. It's impressive what you've done.
Thank you, Steven. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed the conversation with you and Andre.
It was fun.
Yeah, thanks so much.
Jarek, thank you for letting me join up and keep doing what you're doing. I love coming here.
Will do.
And Andre, great job co-hosting. Love what you add. So much fun. I love the Portland beer community that we can celebrate each other. And if you're listening to this podcast, and Portland is not your home, and we have a lot of listeners across the country, when you come to Portland, this is kind of like the Disneyland of beers, isn't it?
Absolutely. Well, yes, it is.
I mean, I grew up in Southern California, and maybe some people don't like that, but this is like an amazing place for other people across the country to come for a beer vacation, right?
Yeah, it's like in all the different quadrants of the city are the different parts of Disneyland, like Tomorrowland and Fantasyland, and you just travel from land to land and take a ride.
And I'm being very serious when I say this. I could name a lot of great places for people to come for beer, and people do. And there's a lot of places that make the top 10, top 5 list of breweries in Portland. But if you come to Portland, I would really encourage you on a trip. Make sure you come to Threshold. It's going to be an eye-opening, pretty amazing experience, and you'll get it's a gem that maybe needs to be celebrated a little bit more.
Definitely a stop. Must stop.
Yep.
Please do, and thank you.
All right. Cheers, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.